The Long Road to Nowhere. Week 1 turned out. County Cork, Ireland, March 1847. The rain had stopped somewhere before dawn, leaving the earth glistening beneath a grey sky that seemed too weary to brighten. Mist drifted across the low fields around Ardra, softening the stone walls and the bare hedgerows, until they appeared like ghosts rising from the land. It was the sort of morning Sean Maher usually welcomed. Rain meant the landlord's steward would delay inspections. Rain gave a man another day to repair a wall, to dig a drain, or to pray that somehow another potato might be found where none had grown before. But this morning there would be no work. The cottage door stood open. There was no door to close it. The bailiff's men had broken it from its hinges before sunrise. Sean sat on the damp grass, his elbows resting on his knees, staring at the heap that had been his family's possessions. 2 blankets, a blackened iron pot, 2 wooden bowls, a stool missing 1 leg, a small spinning wheel that had belonged to Breed's mother, a cracked pitcher, a bundle of clothes tied together with rope. 20 years of living had been reduced to a pile that would fit onto a donkey cart, if they had owned a donkey. Beside him, smoke still curled from the ruined roof of the cottage. The thatch had been pulled down so no family could creep back inside after dark. It had been done to hundreds of cabins across Ireland that winter. Sean had watched every handful of straw fall. He said nothing. There had been nothing to say. Breed sat beside the bundle of blankets, with little Liam asleep against her shoulder. The boy was only 3, though the famine had stolen so much flesh from him that he looked scarcely older than 2. His breathing rattled softly in his chest. Mary, 6 years old and wiser than any child should have been, sat cross-legged on the ground, quietly holding the family's only treasure, a small carved wooden horse. Sean had made it for her during the winter before the blight first came. It had once been painted blue, only flecks of colour remained. She ran her thumb over its worn back as though it were still alive. "Da?" Sean looked over. "Are we going home now?" The word struck harder than any blow. He forced a smile. "We'll find another place." "When?" "Soon." She accepted the answer because children believe what they need to believe. Breed did not look at him. She knew it was a lie. The steward arrived just after sunrise on horseback. Mr. Booth had never dirtied his boots with Irish mud. The Englishman managed the lands for Lord Carlisle, who had not visited Cork in nearly 11 years. Rent was expected with perfect punctuality from a landlord whose face most tenants had never even seen. Booth glanced over the family as if inspecting abandoned tools. "You've had sufficient time." Sean rose slowly. "We've nowhere to go." "That's unfortunate. My children, the tenancy has ended." Sean clenched his jaw. "I worked that land for 9 years. You occupied it. I improved it. It belongs to Lord Carlisle." Sean looked beyond the steward to the field. The ridges where potatoes had once grown lay black and empty. 9 years, 9 harvests, hundreds of days behind a spade. Every stone lifted by his own hands, every drain dug, every fence repaired, yet none of it had ever truly belonged to him. Booth produced a folded paper. "If you remain upon the property after noon, you'll be prosecuted for trespass." Breed stood. "Where are we to take the children?" The steward hesitated only briefly. "There is accommodation available." "The workhouse?" "Indeed." Sean answered before Breed could. "No." Booth raised an elbow. "It's preferable to starvation." "No family comes out whole. You exaggerate. I've seen them." That ended the discussion. The steward gathered the reins. "Good day." Sean watched him ride away without looking back. By midday they had left everything familiar behind. Sean carried the pot and blankets over one shoulder. Breed held Liam. Mary walked between them, clutching her wooden horse. No one spoke. The road towards Cork was already crowded. Families. Widows. Old men pushing carts with wheels that squeaked. Children barefoot in the cold. Some carried feather beds, others nothing at all. One old woman dragged a sack that nearly held far more weight than she could manage. No one offered to help. Everyone was preserving the little strength they had left. The famine had taught terrible arithmetic. One mouth less meant another mouth survived. Near evening, they reached a crossroads where several families had gathered beneath a stand of ash trees. No fires burned. There was nothing to burn, except damp branches that produced more smoke than warmth. Sean recognised one face, Tomás Kelleher. They'd worked adjoining fields years before. Tomás stood and embraced him. "Sean, I thought you were west of Macroom." "We were." "Where?" "They pulled the cabin down in January." Sean nodded. No further explanation was needed. Tomás looked toward Breed and the children. "They're small. They've eaten little." Tomás reached behind his coat and produced something wrapped in cloths. Half a loaf of coarse oat bread. Sean stared. "You should keep it." "We've already eaten today." There was an obvious lie. Sean could see the hollow cheeks. Tomás's wife looked scarcely alive. His eldest son watched the bread with desperate eyes. "I can't." "You can." Tomás pushed it into Sean's hand. "Tomorrow it might be me asking." Sean swallowed hard. "I'll remember." Tomás smiled sadly. "I hope you never have to." That night, Sean divided the bread. The children received most of it. Mary insisted Liam have part of hers. "I'm not hungry." She was. Everyone knew she was. Breed pretended to eat. Instead, she slipped her piece into Liam's blanket while he slept. Sean noticed. He said nothing. Later, after the children had fallen asleep beneath the blankets, Breed leaned against him. "I don't think I can watch them starve." "You won't." "How?" "I'll find work." "There is none." "I'll find something." "You don't know that." "No." Silence settled between them. Finally, she whispered, "Would it truly be so terrible? The workhouse?" Sean stared into the darkness. He remembered stories from Cork. Families separated at the gate, men one way, women another, children elsewhere. Disease, death. Those who survived came out strangers. "If we go in," he said quietly, "we may never be together again." Breed wiped tears from her face before they could fall. "I know." Among them the stars appeared one by one through breaks in the cloud. Somewhere along the road a child coughed without stopping. Another cried until exhaustion silenced him. Far away, a church bell rang the hour. Sean lay awake long after everyone else slept. He listened to the breathing of his wife, to Liam's weak wheeze, to Mary's quiet murmuring as she dreamed. Then he looked back toward the darkness where the cottage had once stood beyond the hills. Home was still there, only they no longer belonged to it. As dawn began to lighten the eastern sky, Sean rose without waking anyone. He climbed the low ridge overlooking the road. Below him stretched a line of humanity moving slowly towards Cork. Hundreds, perhaps thousands. Families carrying all that remained of their lives. No destination, only movement. Only hope that somewhere beyond the next hill there might be a place where no one would tell them to leave. Sean watched them for a long time. Then he turned back towards his sleeping family. "Hold on," he whispered, though he couldn't tell whether he was speaking to them or to himself. Week 2. The Roadside. The morning sun broke through the mist with little warmth. Sean Maher rolled the damp blanket from around his shoulders and stretched the stiffness from his back. Every bone ached from sleeping on the hard ground beneath the ash trees. Beside him, Breed was already awake, quietly brushing leaves from Mary's tangled hair, while Liam still slept against her breast. Or rather, he dozed. The boy's sleep had become shallow, broken by a cough that seemed to scrape at his tiny chest. Sean listened. The cough came again, longer this time. Breed caught his eye but said nothing. There was no comfort left in words. Around them, the little encampment of homeless families was stirring. Some drifted away before sunrise, hoping to avoid being noticed by farmers whose land they had occupied for the night. Others lingered, too exhausted to move. One old man never rose at all. His daughter knelt beside him, gently shaking his shoulder. "Dada!" Nothing. Again, "Dada!" Still nothing. There were no cries, no dramatic outburst, only silence. The woman pulled his coat over his face, crossed herself, and sat beside him. The others looked away. Death had become too common to interrupt the business of survival. Sean lifted their bundle onto his shoulder. "We should go." Breed nodded. Mary looked back only once. "Will someone bury him?" I hope so, Sean replied. He wasn't certain anyone would. The road towards Cork was alive with movement. People walked without speaking. Some leaned on sticks. Some pushed crude carts carrying children too weak to walk. Many simply wandered. Every face carried the same expression, not grief exactly, but exhaustion beyond grief. Sean noticed crows following the road. Patient. Waiting. He hated them. By midday the children were slowing and Mary stumbled twice. I'm all right, she insisted, before anyone asked. She wasn't. Liam had stopped asking to be carried. He simply rested his head against Breed's shoulder, too tired even to complain. Sean searched every hedgerow for anything edible. There were nettles, though still young, a handful of sorrel, wild onions no thicker than grass. He gathered what he could. It was hardly enough to flavour water. Near a crossroads they found the remains of an abandoned cabin. Only 3 walls still stood. The roof had collapsed months before. Sean examined it carefully. It'll keep the wind off. Breed smiled for the first time in days. It wasn't much, but it was something. Together they dragged fallen branches across the opening. Mary helped without being asked. Liam watched quietly. When evening came, Sean lit a tiny fire from dry twigs hidden beneath the rubble. The pot hung over it. Inside, water, nettles, sorrel, a few wild onions, nothing more. The soup smelled of damp earth. Yet when Sean poured it into the wooden bowls, the children smiled. Liam even laughed. I can see the leaves. Sean forced a grin. A feast. Mary giggled for rabbits. Then we'll eat like rabbits tonight. The laughter lasted only moments, but it was enough to remind them what happiness had once sounded like. That night, rain returned. Water dripped steadily through the broken stones. Breed pulled both children beneath the blanket. Sean remained nearest the entrance, where the wind struck hardest. Around midnight, he awoke to hear Liam coughing again, violently. The child couldn't stop. His tiny body shook with every breath. Breed held him upright. Breathe, love. Another cough, then another. Sean reached across and touched Liam's forehead. Hot. Far hotter than before. Breed's voice trembled. He's burning. We'll find help tomorrow. Where? Sean had no answer. The following afternoon they reached a small roadside chapel where several women distributed bowls of thin broth to passing families. A line stretched nearly 50 yards. Sean joined it. When his turn finally came, the elderly nun filling bowls looked into his eyes before glancing at the children. She filled Liam's bowl almost to the top, then quietly ladled another spoonful into Mary's. God bless you, Sean whispered. The nun smiled sadly. I wish blessings filled empty stomachs. She reached beneath the table. Take these. 2 pieces of oat bread. Real bread. Sean hesitated. There are others. There always are. She closed his fingers around it. Go before I change my mind. Breed's eyes filled with tears when she saw it. That evening they ate more than they had in nearly a week. Not enough, never enough, but enough that Liam's cheeks regained the faintest touch of colour. Sean allowed himself something dangerous. Hope. The next morning, hope vanished. A farmer rode into the field on horseback. What are you doing here? Sean stepped forward. We'll leave today. You'll leave now. The children are ill. I said now. Breed gathered the blankets while Mary struggled to lift the little pot. Sean wanted to argue, wanted to shout that the family had nowhere else. Instead, he lowered his head. Come on. The farmer watched until they reached the road. Only then did he turn his horse away. Mary looked back. Did we do something wrong? Sean swallowed. No. Then why won't they let us stay? He looked across the empty fields. Once he would have answered with certainty. Now he wasn't sure. Late that afternoon they caught sight of another familiar face. Tomás Kelleher. He waved them over beneath a stand of beech trees. His family looked thinner than only days before. His youngest daughter no longer walked. She lay wrapped in blankets inside a handcart. Tomás managed a tired smile. I heard there's work breaking stones near Cork. Sean shook his head. They've stopped most of it. So they say. Tomás lowered his voice. I also heard grain ships are coming and going every day from the harbour. Sean frowned. Grain? So much grain they need extra guards. Sean stared. Guards? Aye. Tomás shrugged. Seems strange, doesn't it? Strange. The word lingered in Sean's thoughts long after the conversation ended. Grain. Enough to require guards, while children starved within sight of the harbour. That night the families shared the shelter of an enormous oak. No one slept well. Wind rattled the branches overhead. Somewhere nearby, a woman sobbed quietly for hours. Mary lay beside Liam, holding his hand. Sean watched them. He remembered Liam chasing chickens only the previous summer. Remembered Mary laughing as she gathered blackberries. Those memories already felt like stories belonging to another family. Breed leaned close. Promise me something. What? If it comes to choosing, Sean frowned, choose them. I always will. No. She took his hand. If there's only enough for one of us. He stopped her. There'll be enough. She searched his face. Neither believed it. The wind rose. Sean looked towards the distant glow that marked the direction of Cork. Somewhere beyond those lights stood warehouses filled with grain. Enough grain to need guarding. Enough grain that ships carried it away while Ireland starved. For the first time a thought entered his mind. It came quietly, almost like a whisper. What if I simply took some? He pushed the idea away at once. He was not a thief. He had never stolen so much as an apple in his life. Yet as Liam began coughing again in the darkness, the whisper returned, and this time it stayed.